my name is Whitney Graham. I work for the Information Systems Unit of DG for Health and Food Safety. And I just came today to speak to you a little bit about the clinical patient management system, and I'll show you some of the details now. But just to set it in context, the clinical patient management system in the first phase from setting up the ERMs is one of 4 IT tools in this phase. And a lot of your members are already familiar with the collaborative platform, and with WebEx, I know EpiCARE are heavy users of the WebEx feature. The clinical patient management is separate. It's for discussing individual patient cases and has a separate integrated video tool for that. And then obviously there are websites. There's a public website on European pages on the European Commission's website, and then there are 21 of the 24 ERMs have specific websites. In future phases, which we're now entering into the second phase, we're dealing more with other sides of the IT tool, e-learning, research, registries, and so on. Just in relation to the clinical patient management system, it was launched last year in November, and since then, every week we've had growing numbers of panels set up by ERNs. We have 21 active ERNs treating 88 patients, so 88 open patient panels, and we're hoping that EpiCARE will get on board soon. The mandate for the first phase was to establish one system that worked for all ERNs with a single data set. We received a data set from EpiCARE at the beginning, so in the first quarter of last year, and we incorporated the data that was requested in the common data elements, which are now available. However, now we're moving to the second phase, where we're working a bit more with dedicated data sets. I'll speak to you a bit more about them in a minute. So the key functionalities, one of the most important ones that we customized it so that there is crossover between the ERNs. You can open a panel for a patient and forward it to another ERN. And you can also invite experts from other ERNs or from outside your ERN to either enroll patients or participate in the panel with their expertise. So I'll show you a little bit about that now. The last 2 areas are what we're starting to work on now. We have from 2 ERNs, we already have specifications for dedicated data sets. And we're working with 4 other ERNs at the moment for their data sets. And then we're also working with the Joint Research Centre. It was already presented earlier, the European Rare Disease platform of registries. And we're trying to align and map data elements from CPMS with the common data elements specified that were presented earlier, specified for the Rare Diseases Registries platform. Okay, so just very briefly, I won't go through this in detail, but there are 3, in establishing the workflow for the clinical patient management system, there are 3 main parts to it. So the first is around the patient enrollment and consent, and I know that you were speaking about consent earlier. I'll show you the model consent form in a minute. And then the second part is around the assessment by the different experts and access. And the third part then is to close it, and based on the consent selected, to allow data for registries or research. So just to let you know that this is kind of generic information, but just to say that we had worked very closely with the data protection coordinator, obviously in our own area, but also with the European Commission data protection officer. And finally, we had a prior check with the European data protection supervisor, not just of the model-informed consent form, but also of the CPMS system itself. So I'm just going to show you now how it works. So it's a web-based system. Okay, so just when you log in, so I've logged in not as a coordinator or a guest. I've logged in as a consulting expert or a specialist. And the system is split into apps. And there are different apps. There's an app for your centre, an app for the ERN, for interacting with the ERN. There's a map, and then there are other apps, which if you have the right to access them, they will appear in the top. I'll show you some of those later. One of them is a database manager where you can build queries on the data in CPMS. So the centre app is ring-fenced, security ring-fenced, and it's where you enroll a patient. And these fields are the only identifying fields, and they are only ever visible in the centre app. So they're only ever visible to the centre that enrolls the patient. Immediately after the patient is enrolled, the data is pseudonymized. And here, this is the section that deals with consent. The consent forms are available in each language, and they are model consent forms. And our advice from the European Data Protection Supervisor is that they are satisfied that they meet the current data protection regulation at the European level and the GDPR, but that they should be checked with the legal service in your hospital, because in each country it's different. Some countries have national approval of these things, but some countries have either regional or sometimes even at hospital level. And I also refer you to these documents here, which give some information on how the model consent forms should be used. I'm not sure if you've seen it already. You can see it here. And here you can see that there is both opt-in and opt-out. So the idea is that the point of care specialist downloads the consent form, fills it in with the patient and explains it, and then it's stored on the local patient file. We don't upload it to the system because clearly it contains identifying data. But you have to certify the system that it was taken care of, and after 15 years, or coming up to 15 years, it would have to be redone, and the system will make that happen. Here, if there are 3 levels of consent, and it was mentioned earlier, if the patient gives consent for their data to be used for ERN databases or registries, you have to specify for what, for which reason. And the third is not for research, it's consent that the patient could be contacted for research, and again, the purpose has to be specified. And then it's just to know data.
When you say specified, you mean you need to know to what trial potentially will be entered?
Yeah.
So you cannot ask them to sign for future trials that appear. I mean, give them an agreement that you can contact them if a trial comes in.
Yeah.
But you have to already know the type of trial.
No, you don't. You can say, so you can fill that in subsequently. You can always go back to this form. You can fill it in subsequently when you know the purpose. So they're giving their consent to be contacted for the research to specify. Okay, so each patient gets a record label, but this label it contains obviously the first name and last name, but it is only ever visible to the centre that enrolls the patient. As soon as I click this button, the data is pseudonymized. Now, I'm obviously logged on as the same clinician, so I can see the identifying data, and I can go back at any time to the enrollment window, and I can wipe the data if the patient has asked me to do so. And there you have to log that you did this and so on. This is all in line with the data protection rules. So if I go back to my centre, I'll just open the patient we just enrolled. So now I want to open a panel and invite experts to consult on this patient. So I open the panel, and here I have to complete a nickname, and the nickname is the only data about patient name that will be visible, but I can't use the same characters as I use in the name. It won't let me. So I have to give it a totally different name. So, okay. And these fields are mandatory, but after this there are very few mandatory fields. And this is where we're working with several ERNs on dedicated data sets. So this hospital is a member of these ERNs, so I have to select which ERN. Then I select the thematic area, and you could have several secondary thematic areas. At this stage, I'm the point of care specialist. If I want to complete more information about the patient, I can do so. Or if I want to upload documents, or images, I could do so. I can do it here. I'll show you an example of that, some of those ones in a minute. I'm just going to go through the workflow for the moment. So I save this. And here you can see the workflow. So this is the workflow for virtual consultation. So we move forward through to panel selection. I invite members, and these are the thematic areas within the ERN. And each specialist can set their preferences for all thematic areas or just one or two. And then if they do that, they will be available for being invited. So I can invite all, for example. And here, if I want to, I can accept on behalf of the panel members. Or I can change the panel lead if I want somebody to upload data, that only the panel lead can upload the data. Or if I want to invite specialists from another ERN or from outside the ERN, I can request the assistance of the coordinator. During this phase, I can also schedule a meeting. I won't do this now. And to discuss, is this the right panel of experts or not? And just for information, on the left-hand side, you have the patient file, so the data about the patient, and on the right-hand side, you have the panel activity, which you can see at any stage. So this gives me a chance to complete data. I was also able to do it when I opened the panel. But here it's a second chance to do it because perhaps panel members requested specific data and you can edit again and complete data again. I'll show you one that has data completed in a minute because it will save some time. Okay, so I'm just going to move straight to the assessment phase. And in the assessment phase, the idea in the business process is that there will be perhaps a virtual meeting. And these can either be part of a recurring meeting, so some ERNs requested that we set up a system so that they could set up a meeting once a week for 2 hours, and different patients could be added to 15-minute slots within that 2-hour meeting, or an individual meeting. And in the timeline, I can see it here, and prior to the meeting, about 5 or 10 minutes before the meeting, you will have a join button here. I'll show you that later too. Okay, so sorry, before we move to the outcome stage, each doctor gets to record their contribution. The other doctors can see the contributions, but obviously they can only edit their own. And you can also, we have put in some metrics to show how much time you spend on each consultation or each patient. You can add attachments. And this is for health economy purposes in the future as well. And you can also add comments at any stage, the timeline. If you disagree with something.
If it is, for example, a medical report of 2 days hospitalization of the patient, it is the responsibility of the one who puts it into anonymized, no?
Yeah, so I was...
Because the file as such has the name of the patient unavoidably.
Absolutely right. I was going to talk about that a little bit when we got to the medical images, but PACs are automatically anonymised by the system if we wrap them in a DICOM wrapper. But any other documents, PDFs, they are not automatically anonymised. However, it is possible to link the system, to integrate it with your hospital data, to upload data directly using IHE or FTP, and therefore CDISC and CDA and so on. We can do some automatic anonymisation. The recorded contribution. So the idea is that all of the panelists record a contribution, and then the panel lead prepares an outcome. The outcome is the document. At this stage, you can move back the workflow back to assessment if further things are needed. So the panel lead records an outcome. It's draft, and all of the panel members can see the outcome in draft. You can use the timeline to do that. And you may say, you didn't take my comment into consideration or whatever. So each timeline, each chat bar is specific to the window you're looking at. But they're all included in the full timeline with the patient file. So I'm just going to move up to sign off. And then the panel lead is responsible for signing off the outcome document. So they may have seen comments here that they want to change it and so on. They can save it again or they can sign it off. So here I'm going to sign it off. And I'm going to, you can view the outcome, which is this. And when I move to close, you can see the outcome of the document either, which is intended as an advice for the point of care specialist. Actually, I have one already. So it would look something like this and would have as much or little detail as you need. And then I showed you the consent window at the beginning, so there are 3 types of consent. So depending on what consent, here I'm closing the panel. And I have to complete if it's successful or not, if there's a diagnosis or not. And here you can, I'll show you in patient data file as well, you can search all coding systems at once. If it's not in OrthoNet, for example, it may be in one of the other classification systems. But I'll show you some examples of that completed. And then you close the panel. Sorry, I have to complete some of these. So I'm going to do that right now. I'll show you some patients I had prepared earlier. So if we have a look at there's a patient here where some of the data have been completed, and you can see some activity on the timeline as well. I'm going to go back to my patient list. And I'm going to show you some images. So here there has been an image uploaded, so I'm going to have a look. And this is the image viewer that's integrated into the system, so you can either drop a single image or a series of images. And there are different functionalities. You can change the layout. You can invert the color, obviously you can zoom, pan, and then there are certain presets that you can use, magnify. You can annotate with length or with angle measurements. You can move in more depth and draw circles and rectangles to shape certain parts of the image, rotate, and you can flip it. So this has loaded a series of images which you can play, or you can decrease or increase the rate.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
If we have a web-based conference on a patient like this, can we see each other? Can we look together at the images, or is the host going to coordinate this? Who can see what kind of screens? And are you going to show examples on that as well?
Yeah, so I was going to show you a meeting.
Where do you actually upload data at the beginning?
Yeah, so here at 2 phases. When you open the panel or when you complete the data, you can upload data there. And in fact, we've had a recent request that was approved by the ERM IT Advisory Group, where we bring any requests that we receive after we've analysed them and they decide if they're a priority or not, to allow data completion also at assessment phase. So that different people from the panel, so if you have somebody contributing who maybe needs to upload a slide or a test result, that they can also do so during the assessment phase.
Does it work like the general viewer for the data, so you can change the intensity size, you can go for 3D with the department?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we're working with Vascular at the moment, which is one of the other URMs who've also asked this question about 3D images and rotating, and we're looking into that at the moment. It is possible in the web-based viewer, and some of the images already work that way, depending on what wrapper we put them in. So we have an open call to all URMs to let us know of any image formats and manufacturers of images that you have, and then we can see how to best wrap them in a DICOM wrapper.
In the videos?
That's our other question, is video EG, which I've asked, so I haven't asked recently because I'm trying to decide how to pilot it.
Yeah.
But I asked at the beginning,
Okay.
and it was an unknown question at that point.
Okay.
Because video EG is key to us, and in fact, I put it in the CAFCAL because I thought we probably need to do some work with it in order to do it, because it's really key to our specialty. But
Okay.
I have to look at that.
Okay.
We cannot download the images from here to our individualized viewer the radiologist now on the center has.
Yeah, so there's two things. Again, it depends on your local data protection law. So sometimes you can upload images, and some places you can't. Then you have to share them during your virtual meeting, as you mentioned earlier. If you can upload them, you can see here, if I want, sorry, I'm opening it there. If I uploaded it, I can download it. So I'm actually in the wrong section here. I'm just going to go to medical documents. And here, so I haven't, Prism Login hasn't attached this image, so I can't download it, but I could otherwise download or delete it. But other people cannot do that. So
that's a good thing. So you cannot, because we know that the radiologists have their own viewers that they're particularly used to, they want to use to evaluate the images, so that's not possible. You have to use the software that's provided on this platform.
So we can look into it. We're very happy to get new feature requests. It's anonymized, automatically anonymized.
I think the issue in the case of privilege role is that we are supposed to be in the phase of pilot to which we as a group haven't done yet. And so that we can feed back what particular needs may be, which may be shared amongst other ERNs. It may be that we're not the only ones. So I think we have to decide what we can do with this and what the limitations are and what we need to discuss about. And as I said, video imaging, which is a separate question, is one case in point.
And if we, at the beginning, we state that the consent is only signed for the discussion of the case and not for storage of data, is that automatically the data securing once we've closed it?
Do we have to do it?
We have to do it.
So no, actually I was going to show you.
Sorry.
It's one prize. No. It's a good question, and I'm going to take both of those comments on board and see. We're also working with one of the other ERNs on images, but we have had the system tested by 2 radiologists, one in-house and also one from ERN neuromuscular diseases in France, who tested it and gave us feedback on it, that it was appropriate and so on. Obviously, if there's different types of imaging or layers or videos, we need to see if
the level of advancement of epilepsy imaging is probably not really comparable to neuromuscular imaging. This is something
that's something we have to look at and we have to try.
And it could be that some of those things are already possible with very little change, and maybe even already possible. I'd have to look into it. So I'm just going to show you where a patient has consented. Sorry. Okay, so I wanted to show you when a patient has consented, that when you close the file, I'll just push it here.
Do you close the file after each episode, or is the file open until which time you've decided that you will work with the family?
It's completely variable, so some panels could take some months, some panels could take some weeks. We also have a new feature request that's currently in development to be rolled out in the next few weeks, where you can clone a panel of an existing patient. So not between patients, obviously, but so if you needed to have, if there was another episode and you needed to have another panel and you wanted to keep the data that had already been entered, but have a new panel and a new outcome, it will be available in the next week or two.
So what you're asking is that it remains open until the full discussion has taken place and the sign-off outcome, the outcome has been signed off.
I mean, the way I can see it, I mean, this is very similar to my day job. I work for social care. I'm just independently designing something very similar. But to me, the scope of it in the future could support virtual centres of excellence, whereby you can bring in clinicians from other areas. Obviously, it's the area specific at the moment.
Well, but it is ERNs, you can ask people from other ERNs to join you. For example, if we had a stir-trader case and there was a specific skin issue, then we might ask somebody to come in from you might ask somebody to come from the skin, or for the vascular VRM to join on that particular session. Just like they may have a patient with epilepsy and one of the other ones, they may actually ask us to join them to discuss it.
Okay, so for this patient had consented to research. So when I'm at the close stage here and I move to next, actually there's a different one. Sorry. Okay, so this patient is available for research. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log on as the database manager and you'll be able to see. But again, it's only if the patient consented.
So if the patient consents for the research, the data can stay there?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. For ERN databases registries, it stays there, yeah. Otherwise, when you close an archival panel, the data is still available to the enrolling centre, but not to the rest of the ERN.
And the imaging and everything stays there?
Yeah.
But it stays in the CPMS format. It's not transferred to another data.
No.
So we have the possibility to export data if it's anonymized. So this is what I was saying as well. So here, sorry, I'll just interrupt myself a second. Here you have the ERN app. I don't have a centre app because I'm looking at the data that is being entered in CPMS for this ERN. And this is an app I have a right to as you choose your role when you select access. And here I created a test report where you can see data that was entered for one of the patients. And you can do different things with this. You can export it and so on. However, it is anonymized data. So also the data here is a longitudinal view of the panels rather than the patient. So it's not in itself a registry. So, but we are working at the moment with the JRC, as I said, and also we're looking at technical options. Somebody mentioned RedCap earlier, with links, possible links. We also have to look at the strategic implementation of this and where they're moving in policy-wise, how we can use the data from CPMS for these purposes. The legal framework. So I was just going to quickly show you what if I log on as the ERN coordinator.
So if I would upload a patient and request you for specific members of our team, would they get an email? What's happening then to know that they're invited to comment?
So they get a daily digest. Yes, we didn't a daily digest, so an email once a day, unless there is an option to flag a patient as an urgent case. In that case, they will get an email straight away. And if you are invited to a meeting for this afternoon and the daily digest has already gone, you will get an email to tell you that there's a meeting. But we try to minimise the amount of emails at request. Okay, so logged on as the ERN coordinator, you can see that here I created this patient as a guest user. So I was able to enroll a patient, but then it arrives in the inbox of the ERN coordinator to set up a panel. Guests can also be invited to panels with the assistance of the coordinator. The ERN coordinator also has here performance indicators for the ERN, the number of active users, the panel is closed, and so on. Again, let us know what you need and we can put it there. The ERN coordinator can set up monthly meetings, so every week on a Friday, and these are the meetings to which you can add your individual patients. Everybody has a dashboard with preferences, and this is where you can put in your speciality and also which thematic areas you want to participate in. And then you're available to be invited to meetings or panels.
Or, because at the moment, I mean, we've done it by WebEx before, we're not transferring any data, just sharing screens, which means we can talk backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
So I think we're all clear as to how that works in a virtual meeting here.
Okay, so the idea is that the video tool is integrated and at, I'm just going to show you how it might work. And now I can already join the meeting. Before you join the meeting, I know if you're using WebEx a lot, sometimes there's issues. So you can test the video with this button. This is again something that was requested by ERMs. So you can see that your computer isn't by default using any of the video technology like Skype or WebEx that may start up by default and monopolize your camera and audio. So it's important to know that before you join the meeting to avoid problems. So you can click join the meeting. Actually, I should close this. So I haven't invited anybody. So I'm not sure what's on this computer. Also it's using this camera, so it's difficult.
But bottom line is you all join like we do with the WebEx.
You join
with the video camera.
Exactly, and the idea is that you can move this window around so you can look at the patient, you can look at the image during the meeting, and the people are appearing here. You can also record the meeting, and it's available in the timeline afterwards, or you can share your screen during the meeting. If you don't want to upload an image, you can share the screen instead. That's the idea of the integrated video tool. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to show during presentations because the camera is slides down. But the environment I'm demonstrating at the moment is a training environment. The test accounts that I'm using, you're all free to use. You can do whatever you want in this environment, it's fine, before you use the real one.
So one thing, I suppose, if we're not able to upload video G at the moment, we can share a screen, we can actually share the video telemetry just as we do with the WebEx, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is it possible that 2 or 3 attendants of the meeting scroll through the images at the same time at different points in the space?
Is it one person driving the images?
Yeah, normally it should
You
be.
need to pass the screen to someone.
No, I mean like you and I together we're discussing this patient and in the meantime we want to look at some slides of the images. Can we do it independent of each other?
Or is somebody driving it?
Yeah, so you are driving. There is a host, but you can pass the host around. But you want it simultaneous. In that sense, you have to have downloaded the images.
And you can run independently at your computer if you are not the host of the.
If, for example, we are 4 on the discussion, this is showing the EEG, and I decide that at the same time I want to go and see the MRI. That's the question. Can I go and see the MRI while the other 3 keep discussing the EEG, or not?
You can, but you may be kicked out of the meeting. Good question. I have a question. Would you have to rejoin?
Because they control how concentrated so we but it will create habits.
It's actually a good question. I would think about those things around that, because I can see why you would want to do that. Yeah.
And similarly, because I never used it, if, for example, you upload an MRI, someone, of course, is guiding it, but we are discussing where the lesion is. Can I, from my computer, use the arrow and go and say, I think it's there, or I have to ask the coordinator to give me the screen and then I touch it and then I come back?
So if you're on the panel, before the meeting, you can go in and have a look at it, and you can put whatever annotations you want on it. And
before the panel?
Yeah. Not before the panel, before the virtual meeting. So you're already a member of the panel, so the idea is you can consult and you can look at everything yourself before you have a virtual meeting.
And you annotate it and then it appears for everybody when the moment comes.
Yeah.
Helen, maybe
Yeah.
2 more questions.
Yeah, sure.
You spoke about anonymization. So is it real in the strict sense, so that these are no longer personalized data and can be stored anywhere? Or is it just pseudonymization? So is it
Good question. Okay, so after I click enroll the patient, where I've entered name, first name, date of birth and gender, that's pseudonymized. But if the patient gave consent for the data to be used for ERM database or registries, then it moves to a different application, which is completely separate, and that's anonymized data at the end.
About 3D data sets, maybe. One of the problems is that you can reconstruct the faces from this. Is this skull stripping involved here or not with the MRI?
Yeah, actually I'm not qualified to answer that, so there's no point in me trying, but what I will do is I'll check it out and I'll send them an email and let her know.
So you probably discussed this, but I want to make sure I fully understand. We will be able to use the share screen function in the same way we do today with WebEx for video of seizure.
That's what we just discussed.
The
So we can do that.
responses
A host can share, or somebody can share screen to show something on their own computer.
Okay.
Yes.
And here, so like, this is something we do on a regular basis. We need to do it when we share a video that is displaying on the screen of the presenter. Of course, one can recognize the face of the patient in some circumstances, but the data are not loaded anywhere. They are staying in the hospital. They are just shared on the screen. Will there be any limitation here, ethics issue from your point of view, or as long as the data are not uploaded, this does not injure ethical problems?
Okay, so particularly in the case of the ERN for epilepsy and maybe craniofacial abnormalities, we've had this discussion a lot because obviously you need to be able to see the face or the eyes or even more of the patient. So in the system, except for the enrolling centre, that if the data is uploaded, that data is anonymized, or well, actually it is anonymized. The images are anonymized. So there, you can see here the nickname that I gave the patient, the real name. So in those cases, of course, we can know who it is from the face. However, it's separate from the personal data. And the data protection officer has told us that this is acceptable because it's for medical necessity. However, if in your own local situations you're not allowed to upload data like that, you have to share it from your screen, and that is allowed.
Well, and that's what you're asking, is if we share the screen, it's not translated, it's not transferred, then we are okay.
Fine.
No ethical problems.
Okay, so I think it's an excellent news because that means we'll be able to move very rapidly
to test it, to
yes.
use it.
I also assume that user for imaging can work with any type of DICOM image, not just MRI. It could be PET scan, for instance.
Yeah, and actually on the dashboard there is a sorry. On the dashboard, I'll get back there in a second, there is a full list of the current formats that are supported in DICOM Viewer, but we can add more, and that's where we need to hear from you.
That's why we need to pilot it, so that we can do a two-way conversation as to what else we need.
Excellent.
So as soon as you log on, there's also extensive information on de-identification and anonymization. But I just have to emphasize you still have to respect whatever local rules are in place.
So what about the central training facilities for us as a group? Is someone going to guide us to the first few hours of...
Well, there have been regular webinars, albeit on Tuesday afternoons, which is my clinic time, which is why I've not made very many of them. I think what the issue is whether we have a core group that pilots it, and then once we've had a bit of piloting, we then decide what we can do, and maybe then we have another training session for a group as a whole. And I also heard at lunchtime that we know that not every centre has logged on with a CPMS user. So that's because some hospitals, one hospital in particular, have got a central person who's gaining the experience, all the relevant ERNs, and therefore they will be the person uploading the data, etc. Which is great. I'm not going to that, but that's great. So if that's the case in yours, can you let us know? And that's why you haven't, as a centre, logged on as an EpiCARE person.
And the other thing to say is if you do need a webinar or a WebEx, where we can show you a little bit more, just let us know. So the details, the support details are all here. There's an email. Just send us your request and we'll work with you to schedule that. So
we can do that through Judith. Arjun.
Just a comment really, so thank you very much. I think it helps answer my question about research from previously. To me, it looks like a really great system, but I also just wanted to say thank you for choosing Oxford as your centre.
Demonstration. I knew you'd like that. Yeah, well, then you're in charge then. That's like now I'm taking problems.
It's fine, it's fine.
So as I understand it, only EpiCARE centres will be able to add patients into here for panel discussion. So we know from an EPAC representation that many rare epilepsy patients are not actually seen at one of the 28 centres.
Yeah, no, that's where the care pathway, which we're going to discuss subsequently, comes into it. Because that's where we have to have a train of how do you get into discussion in the centre. And the issue is what the care pathway that we've we previously discussed and we've got to make sure works, is that the advice is that the local centre needs to discuss it with one of their national centre that's in the ERN. So some countries have only got one ERN centre, some of them have got, the UK's got 4, for example, so they discuss it with one of those. It may then be resolved. It may be resolved at that level. If not, then there's the discussion of whether it moves forward to discussion on an international level. And there are other, there's other cases, for example, one area where I think it will come to fore is cases on intensive care units, where they want international, even national opinions. The patient can't move, but actually having this sort of discussion first with the national centre and then in this sort of scenario feeds back to the families that there has been a wide discussion about the patient.
I just wondered, that's really helpful, thanks Helen, from a systemic perspective, whether anyone's thought of a front end to this effectively for a local centre to say, I refer not to into the data, but to...
Well, no, absolutely, and that's where dissemination about it needs to do, and again, that's what discussion we're going to have later. The website, we've actually already got on the website, do you need to discuss your case? You can discuss with your local centre, click here to see where your local centre is. But the issue is making people know about EpiCARE, and that's half the battle, and we've had that discussion on a wider note as well, and we'll have another discussion a bit later.
And just to add to that, if it is decided that an international consultation is necessary, the point of care specialist, even if they're not in a member hospital with the coordinator's authorisation, can enter the system as a guest.
Yes.
If there is this consent form, and if the data is not loaded there or left there, just shown, if the national or local regulations prevent that, do you still need, or do we still need to put the name and the personal information there?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons for that. One is you can't proceed in the system unless consent for care has been given. And if consent for care...
Yes, but the personal information.
Yeah, so if consent for care has been given, you have to indicate it in the system, and you can't indicate that with false data, for example, about name and whatever. But it is important to emphasise that that data, first name, last name, date of birth and gender, not only is it pseudonymised as soon as it's entered and only available to the centre, in the database it is stored encrypted, so it's not stored anywhere as name, first name.
Therefore, we need to have a permission locally for that kind of registry. So that needs to be clear for us, so that there is a data registry.
But it's only the local site, but it's the only local site you will see it. And that's why you have to, there is the fact that our data, the European data protection and the lawyers have said that it's okay, but at a local level, it may be different. I know from our point of view, from the UK, it's clinical care, we don't have a problem. We've had the same discussion about our national surgery database. But other local people may need more of a permission or ethics or something in order to do this.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have had meetings with some hospitals who've asked us, also in the documentation on the dashboard when you log in, even to the training system, there is a lot of documentation about security of the application, how the data is stored, where it's stored, third-party attestations and so on. That might help if you are dealing with your local hospital team, and we're also available if required.
I just wanted to ask you, you had offered kind of webinars to all the activities, but maybe it would be useful for us if we organize the first one or the first, if you can join us and you can follow how we do, and if you can tell us this should be done in a different way. Would you have a capacity for that?
Yeah, we can do that in the training system. We can't do it in the real system because we're not allowed to see patient data.
So I think what we could do is, and that's why they wanted to pilot 5 patients maybe by the end of February, I think it was, which we haven't done. It took you till the end of January to get going if my hospital is okay, just as rather slow. So, I think we need to have a core group to look at 1 or 2 cases and uploading and discussing to feedback, and then come back to the central ED system to say, we've got this problem, we've got that problem, so that we can go through it.
No, I just thought it might be useful to have them on
No,
board,
I agree,
but
but
they are not allowed.
Yeah. Philippe?
Is there any rule for the recording of the CMPS conference that we will hold? Like they should be recorded on principle, and of course if they were recorded with a video flux, then it will be a problem because the recording will include the video of the patient. But maybe there's no such rule. But just wondering.
Is it compulsory to record it?
No, it isn't. Actually, it was added as a feature at the request of some of the ERNs, but obviously you can't record, this is not just in CPMS, you can't record without the agreement of the participants, and it is the responsibility, so it's co-controllership for data protection of the panel lead, so the hospital that enroll the patient who owns the data, to ensure that that's secured.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for coming.